Hi friends, welcome back to another video. It is time for yet again another reading wrap up. We are at the end of October now, and October reading wise was kind of weird for me. I did have a really good reading month. I did read some good books, but the reason why I say it was weird because I was so stressed out with my reading this month for some reason. I think it's because we're nearing the end of the year and I am behind on my reading goal, and I'm trying not to let it affect me too much, but at the same time it does, because I did put this goal that I really wanted to accomplish and I'm nowhere near it right now. But it's fine. It's fine. I'm hoping for November to be kinder on me and on my reading. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it, okay? The very first book that I read in October was Brat by Gabriel Smith. This was a leftover from September, and my intuition that I wouldn't like this book was correct. Honestly, don't even know where to begin with this book because the narrative was all over the place, but at its core, Brat follows our protagonist after the death of his father as he moves into the house in order to clear it out and then eventually sell it. Except he doesn't do that and instead spends his days getting high, drinking, and throwing it all up by the next morning. He's grieving and he feels like somebody's watching him. There's definitely something weird going on with the house. It's falling apart at a rapid pace. There's mold growing in the walls, but ultimately that storyline doesn't go anywhere. There's also another storyline in which our main character finds a manuscript from his mother in her old office, which changes every time he reads it, but that also doesn't go anywhere. The only reason I finished this in the first place was because its structure was really easy to read. It played with formatting and tons of it was just dialogue. I read over 200 pages in one sitting because the pages just kept flying by, but unfortunately nothing happened. The book seemed to peter out by the time the ending came around, and quite honestly, this is a very forgettable book. On my Kindle, I read Nothing But the Rain by Naomi Salman. At only 90 pages, this is a novella about a dystopian world in which the rain, or just water in general, makes people lose pieces of their memory. They could lose anything from childhood memories to what they ate the day before with only a couple minutes of contact with water. And this is a problem because it is always raining. People are confined to their houses, and like I said, even regular pipe water is a problem. They have to boil their water before using it or consuming it. The narrative follows an older MC who's writing down her day-to-day in a diary, and in this way we get to know her and what she's thinking. Don't want to go much into detail just because this is such a short book and I definitely think it's worth the read, but I will tell you this: residents of the town make up a little plan to escape, which is guarded by the army. They don't know what's beyond the little town, if the rest of the world is like theirs, but they want to find out. It's a risky mission and our MC is wrapped up in all that, but she doesn't want any part in it. You know, she's an older lady and she just wants her life to stay sort of the same. She wants her routines in order, and like I said, she does get involved, and from there insane things start happening. I do love a dystopian, as you guys might already know. If I had a nickel for every time I read a novel about a dystopian world in which it is always raining, I would only have 2 nickels, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Continuing on with the Kindle reads, I then picked up Enter Ghosts by Isabella Hamad. This is a book that I was really excited to read as I had seen it floating around, and sadly it fell a little short for me, but it was definitely a me thing. I don't really vibe with the theater, so books about theater productions is kind of lost on me. In this one, we follow Sonia. She's a Palestinian woman living in London as an actress. She's been away from home for so many years, but she returns to Haifa, where her sister lives and where she grew up in. And it is in Haifa. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sorry. But it's an Israel city, so fuck them. Anyways, it is in Haifa where she meets Mariam. She's an old childhood friend, and turns out she's a director, and she's putting up a play of Hamlet in the West Bank. Sonia gets wrapped up in the production despite claiming that her trip is sort of a vacation and she's not really there for work, but she begins to rehearse with the crew. In Enter Ghost, I really like the themes of belonging, identity, and resistance. When Sonia comes back to Haifa, she's faced with how much things have changed since she was last there. Her grandparents' house, for instance, has been sold. The landscape is completely different, both in Haifa and the West Bank, and no longer recognizable to her. There's also a lot of difficulties with putting up a theater production in Palestine. There's so many scenes in which violence threatened to put a stop to the entire thing. Actors and staff were detained and questioned. The whole idea of bringing art and culture into the West Bank was frowned upon by the Israel army. They will shut off the lights in the theater, for instance, so that they will have to rehearse outside in the heat. But they made it work, and I particularly really love that theme of art as a form of resistance, that they were willing to put up the show despite how dangerous it got. It was very admirable, and it got real dangerous real fast. That being said, for a book just a bit over 300 pages, there were so many details in Hamad's writing that made this a read that dragged on a little bit for me. I swear that they were rehearsing for the majority of the book, and I didn't really care for it. I also know that so many things went over my head because I don't know the story of Hamlet, but I just know it had so many references to the present day occupation of Palestine. All in all, a very educational read on the Israel-Palestine conflict. I definitely want to continue reading on the topic, and I have a couple of books on my radar to read soon, but if anyone has any recs, let me know, please. I'm specifically looking for fiction books on the Palestine conflict. Time of the Flies by Claudia Piñero. This is now my third Piñero that I've read, and every single one I've read have been nothing short of excellent, and this one being no exception. In this one, we follow Ines, who's fresh out of prison for killing her husband's mistress. Already, I love her. After prison, she invents a new life for herself alongside her friend Manka, who's another former convict. Together, they start FFF, a business that combines fumigation and investigation services. When a client asks the woman for a peculiar request to obtain a poison only sold to licensed professionals, for example, those with a fumigation license, the women are again thrown into the life of crime that they so desperately want to leave behind. As it is customary of Piñero's work, she explores themes of motherhood and womanhood, which is always done so well and in such fun ways. I mean, this is a crime thriller with some beautiful ideas about motherhood and what it means to be a mother. Ines, for example, gave up motherhood a long time ago. She hasn't spoken or even seen her daughter since she was imprisoned some 15 years ago. She doesn't think of her daughter as a daughter and instead as a woman who she gave birth to. I had a blast reading this. I loved the conversations surrounding words and the power of language, about femicide, gender violence, motherhood, and of course the thriller aspect was very, very fun. The second half had me in such a grip. I couldn't stop reading. I did not see the ending coming. I thought I did, but Piñero was 2 steps ahead of me, which is another thing I love. The little clues she leaves in between the text and how it all comes together. She's a genius, I tell you. I then picked up a book that's been on my physical TBR for some 3 years now, and I'm talking about Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder, and sadly, this was very anticlimactic for me. This is about a young mother who's fed up with her life. She gave up her career to raise the baby while her husband got to keep his and is away on business 5 out of 7 days of the week. She's bearing the grunt of raising a child, and she's angry, as she should be. One day, she notices that her teeth are sharper, more canine-like, and she's had weird tufts of hair growing all over her body. I really like the concept of a woman turning into a dog as a metaphor or allegory for feral women and motherhood, but unfortunately, Yoder could not stop reminding me about that fucking fact. Every other page, I kid you not, was like, oh, and remember, this is an allegory for motherhood. It got really grating to read because I couldn't form my own conclusion, and I felt like I was bottle fed whatever Yoder wanted me to think or take away from this book. The first 70 to 100 pages of this were so strong, but the rest of it dragged on for me. It got a little repetitive with the book just going on and on about her daily life, taking care of her child, which in part I could see it as a way of like showing us how routine her life is, but I don't need to read about it for some 200 pages, baby. I also don't particularly like reading about children or kids in fiction. I try to avoid it as much as I can. Sadly, this didn't work for me. I did not see where the hype for this one comes from. And quite frankly, I've read much better books about motherhood in my time. I also think that this shouldn't have been a novel. This would have done just fine if it was a short story or even part of a collection. It definitely would have stood out more for me that way. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson is one of the oldest books that I own in my shelves. The very first time that I read this was all the way back in 2016, and many things have happened since then. I've read so many books since then, so that has resulted in me not remembering anything about this book. So this autumn I made it my goal to reread it, and my god, I'm so glad I did. I think many of you know of this book, but just in case, in this one we follow four strangers who are to spend a summer at Hill House alongside this scientist who's there to sort of like determine if Hill House is truly haunted or not. Spoiler, it is. The house seems to have a mind of its own. It knows unfamiliar people are within its halls, and the house does not like that at all. The atmosphere in this is where it won me over. I love a book about a haunted house. I ate up the descriptions of the house being dark and evil and uninviting. This was perfectly spooky for the season, and I definitely want to read more Shirley Jackson. I think I'll make a tradition to read one of her books every October because this was excellent. And if she is the queen of horror, I need more. The very last book that I read in October was Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch by Rivka Galchen. This is a book that's always caught my attention whenever I saw it at bookstores, and I mean, how could it not with a cover like that? It's stunning. Finally, I bought it specifically for my reading spooky books video, and I loved it. This is historical fiction following the witch trials in the 1600 Germany. Katharina Kepler, an old widow who's accused of being a witch by a jealous neighbor. And why are they jealous of an old widow? Well, because she has managed to raise her sons to be quite important in society, specifically that of Johannes Kepler, who was a real-life astrologer. He was the one who figured out that planets move faster in their orbit when they're closer to the sun. So while Johannes Kepler's scientific accomplishments are known, not many people know that his real-life mother was accused of being a witch, the very same Katharina we follow in this book. The narration follows her point of view as she is telling her version of the events to her friend and neighbor Simon, who's writing down Katharina's story, and then occasionally we get his point of view as well. There's also snippets of witnesses giving their testimonies, which I really enjoyed. It also really put into view how fickle these cases were, how they were based on lies and people letting their fears guide them. I really enjoyed the story as it unfolded. There was never a boring moment, had steady pacing throughout, and I liked that at first I couldn't tell if Katharina was an unreliable narrator or not, because let me tell you, she has an attitude. She has a very strong personality, and she's definitely a character I will be thinking of for some time. If you're looking for a witchy book, this is definitely one that I will recommend. I can also see myself going down a sort of rabbit hole and reading more about the witch trials. I really like reading on the topic, and I would love some more historical fiction about the topic. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. So those are the 7 books that I read in the month of October. A kind of slow, weird, stressful reading month for some reason, but I did read some really good books that I'm really happy about, and I'm really excited for November's reading plans. I'm hoping that the rest of the year is a lot more relaxed in terms of reading. I do have to read a lot if I want to read 100 books this year, but I hope that I'm less stressed about it and have a lot more fun with the next 2 months that are left of the year. But let me know if you guys have read any of the books that I read in the month of October. Did you like them? Did you not like them? Please talk to me about books that you read in the month of October. Which one was your favorite? I think my favorite was, I think it's sort of a tie between Time of the Flies and Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch. I really enjoyed those two. but I think maybe Piñero's a little bit above because she's Piñero. But yeah, let me know what your favorite read of the month were, and I'll see you guys in the next video.